Auchinvole.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is
Order.
My question is to the Minister for the Environment. What advice has the Minister received on major consents being considered under the Government's new national consenting policy?
The Honourable Dr. Nick Smith.
Mr. Speaker, I'm advised that $5 billion of major infrastructure projects are being progressed under the new national consenting policy introduced by the Government in the 2009 RMA reforms. These projects include new renewable power stations, airport expansions, motorways, prisons and transmission projects. A key advantage of this new process is a single robust submission hearing process taking 9 months rather than a drawn-out process of multiple submission stages and appeals taking many years. The first project lodged under the new policy was the $1 billion Contact Energy Tuhara 2 geothermal station. This was processed under the 9-month timetable, enabled all parties to get a fair hearing and has resulted in robust consent conditions that protect the environment.
Chris Auchinvole.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Supplementary question to the Minister. What benefits are there for ordinary New Zealanders from these more efficient resource consenting processes for major infrastructure?
The Honourable Dr.
Mr.
Nick
Speaker,
Smith.
while power prices relate directly to supply and demand, the problem historically is in taking many years to get resource consents is that constrains power supply and contributed to the very steep rise in electricity prices over the past decade. The more efficient consent processing also helps security of supply, in that delays in getting new power stations built and new transmission lines in place only increases the risks of blackouts and brownouts, as we experienced over the last decade. It's also in the interests of New Zealand is that we're able to, well, the member who was previously the Minister of Energy obviously didn't recognise the problem in Auckland where there were major power failures and in where there were 2 periods where he had to plead with the public of New Zealand to save power because not enough power stations were built, and in which records amounts of coal were burnt to keep the lights on. And I would say to the member opposite, he's embarrassed that this government's reforms are working so effectively in getting new power stations consented.
Question number 10. I beg your pardon. Charles Chauvel, supplementary question.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. Sorry, I nearly missed the call again. What monitoring is the Minister undertaking?
Order. Charles Chauvel, member may start again.
Thank you, sir. What monitoring is the Minister undertaking of the costs to parties involved in his new national consenting policy, in light of reports of legal and consulting bills in the millions of dollars being incurred by those parties, thanks in part to the tight 9-month timetable imposed, and also to unclear policies and processes at his new EPA?
The Honourable Dr. Nick Smith.
Mr. Speaker, the feedback that I have had from major investors like Contact Energy, that they would much prefer the certainty of the constrained timetable and the one-step process rather than the sort of ridiculous example, and I use one like Westwind here in Wellington, where it took over 3 years to be able to consent a wind farm, and the uniform opinion, both actually from objectors as well as applicants, is that they prefer the national consenting process that's robust but is set to a timetable and is producing consents like the $1 billion Tahara project at reasonable cost.
Point of order, Charles Chauvel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my question was directed toward asking the Minister what monitoring is he undertaking of the costs to parties involved in the new consent process, not about what he thought or what he's heard anecdotally are the preferences of...
If the member had asked only that, I think he could have expected a more precise answer, but I recollect the question went on to a much longer question and included more than just that in it. And I believe the Minister was responding to some of the rest of that question. If I've got that wrong, I'm prepared to accept that I've got it wrong, but I believe the member did include more than just that in his question. Question number 10, Dr. Russell Norman.